Hi there, we're Innocent Roses, and this is our early deliverable. In this presentation, you're going to have Rose Joan and Innocent Musyoka doing the presentation. Otherwise, the two other of our team members are Derek Lee and Jeff Solberg. All right, we'll just go ahead and give you a little bit of a background here. So Valencia is a company that is built from ground up by two brothers, Patrick and Frank. It is a state qualified highway contractor based in the state of Indiana. The company has benefited from the founders' prior industry experience coupled with extremely low overheads from their operations. The major client is the state of Indiana Highway Division, which accounts for 90% of the business. In a good year, the company would have 45 road building projects. Now, kind of moving on to the challenges that facing Valencia, we noticed that there are a couple of them. The main one is actually keeping track of compliance to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, also known as the EEOC, presentation standards. This is an important part because failure to have the qualification disqualifies the company from bidding on the state projects. And the qualifications are 10% of the job has to be done by significant minority women or other specified minority in that criteria. They're also facing an issue with keeping track of their employees' payroll. They also have an issue with maintaining the records for their property, plant, and equipment. And this is going to help them a lot once they have a database management system because they'll be able to keep track of what equipment is being used where and by what employee. Also, the database management system will also help them keep track of their service records. And the bottom line here is the exponential growth experienced by Valencia is the main cause of the need of a database management system. So the solutions that will be brought by this system, the system would help in solving anomalies like insertion, manipulation, deletion. The database management system would also help in reducing redundancy and would also ease in communication within the business and keep better track of employees' activities and engagements. Now, for us to be able to come up with an ideal database management system, we had to figure out what information to be included. Fundamentally, we needed to come up with the foundational entities, and when we dug deep, we came up with the following for the foundational entities: employee, job site, piece of equipment, vehicle, material, tools, suppliers, and rates per skill. We also went ahead and identified the associative entities, and the two that we came up with were hours worked and the EEOC compliance. Now we're going to move ahead with the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Innocent. I'll take over, and I'm going to be talking about the tables and their relationships. All right, first table is your earning per skill. This one pulls your employee ID and your skill classification. It takes the employee and whatever skill they have, and then it totals those hours based on the rate and gets your total pay. And then your payroll, pulling your employee ID and then the date and grossing that amount along with the tax. So, and this is your employee table. It has your employee ID and all the employee details, along with if it's an employee is a supervisor or they have a certain type of ethnicity and sex and other important details for the employee. And then this is your assignment table with employee ID, project ID, and skill classification as your primary keys to total your amount of hours worked based on that assignment for that employee. And this is your pay rate, which is based on your skill classification, primary key, and what the rate is. And then this is your estimated hours per skill, which is based on your project ID, which project you worked in, what skill classification was there, and then that totals the whole entire project ID hours worked, and based on that skill classification, and then it then checks to see if it meets that 10% of the minority. And this is the tool tracking. It has the item ID, employee ID, the project ID as your primary key, and then it basically looks at the employee and the project they're in, and then what type of tool or equipment that they have or inventory. And it's just basically make sure that the person is checking in and out of those items. And then the zip code keeps track of the location. And your job site has a primary key of your project ID, and then the job name and what employee worked there, and the inspection, I mean, if it's expected or completed, and if it's a state project, and then the supplier is your vendor, containing the vendor ID as your primary key, and basically just details about your vendor. And then there's inventory. Inventory is a super type with the primary key of item ID, and it just basically contains details about the inventory and the required date, measurements, and kind of type. And then the subtype of that is equipment with the primary key item ID, and then basically when was the last maintenance, when's the next one, and if they own it or not. And the material is also another subtype for the table with the primary key item ID, and it keeps counts of all the materials and the cost and the supplier. And then the next one is your tool, which is also another subtype, and that's an item ID for primary, and it keeps track of your tool category. Now let's look at the relationships of these entities. Let's focus at the very top here. As you can see in the earnings per skill, you have you can have 0 to many assignments, but only 1 earnings per skill, and it can have the earnings per skill can have 1 employee, but the employees can have 0 to many earnings per skill. So this employees can an employee can have multiple skills. And then you have a earnings per skill for pay rate of only 1 pay rate type for this earning per skill. And the pay rate, however, can have 0 to many earning per skills. So there may be other skills that have different pay rates. And then there's this payroll. Payroll can have 0 to many earnings per skill. The earnings per skill can only have 1 payroll. And the payroll can have only 1 employee, but the employee can have 0 to many payrolls. Now the employee can have 0 to many assignments, but the assignment can only have 1 employee. And then the employee can have 0 to many tracking, tool tracking, but the tool tracking can only have 1 employee in the tool tracking. And then the employee can have only 1 zip code, but zip codes can have 0 to many employees. And now let's go to assignments. So assignments can have one job site, but but the job site can have 0 to many assignments, and the assignment can also have only one pay rate, but the pay rate can have 0 to many assignments. And then the pay rate can also have 0 to many estimated hours per skill, but this estimated hours per skill can only have one pay rate, because there may be other pay rates, but they can only calculate one estimated hours per skill per pay rate based on the skill classification. And then there is your job site. The job site can have 0 to many assignments, but the assignment can only have one job site. And then the job site can have 0 to many tool tracings, because there are multiple types of tools. And then the tool can only have one job location. And a job location can only have one zip code, but the zip code can have many job sites. And the zip code can have 0 to many suppliers, but the supplier can only have one zip code. Oops. And oops. Let's go back to supplier. So the supplier can have 0 to many materials, but the materials can only have one supplier. And then there's this tool tracking, and the tool tracking can only have one inventory. But the inventory can have 0 to many tool tracking. And then if you look at the inventory actually is a supertype, and the supertype has actually 3 subtypes. The subtypes are equipment, material, and tool. So I guess based on what inventory you have, it could either be equipment, and then based on the equipment, it is how they're maintaining it, and if it's a material, keeping track of counts of material and the price, and then if it's a tool, then they're keeping track of the type of tool. And then those tools and all those other details can relate to the actual tool tracing based on the project location. And that's that for this relationship. Now let's go to the next slide called benefits. So how does it benefit us? Well, you save hours of not having to do tons of data entry, because once you enter in an entity attribute, you are only able to allow to enter in then the instance of a certain type of users, and then the database then will automate the whole process. So you don't have to manually enter in all the details constantly. And then you can manipulate, enter, and delete data at an easier, faster rate. You can pull reports, especially for the EEOC standards, to make sure that you're compliant with the standard. And again, it's keeping track of your compliance. It's just your EEOC. It's keeping track of your payroll, making sure that you are keeping track of the skill categories and adding that up correctly, and then adding your taxes to make sure that everything is adding up correctly. And then you're tracing your maintenance, making sure everything's fixed and up to date, and then tracking your tools, making sure that they are not lost, and giving people accountability so that they can be more responsible. So that's it. Thank you very much for your time.